Very good evening, brothers and sisters in Christ. Welcome to part 2 of our Audio Essentials webinar series. Now, last time we were together, I went through audio recording best practices that introduced the basic equipment, ins and outs of recording on BandLab. Now, tonight we'll move on to the next step in the process, which will be about mixing. Now, for clarity, I have come up with a full audio recording process flow diagram that you can have on file so that you can have a picture of where we're headed towards. So you start from the left and it ends up on the right. So start planning, then tracking, then mixing, then mastering, then the send off. Now, if it's new and unclear for now, don't worry, there is light at the end of the tunnel. For tonight, we shall focus on the mixing step of the process. All right, so let's dive right into our plan. Like last time, we have 3 sections to go through. I want to bring us through some foundations, followed by a live demo, and then a Q&A. Now, please feel free to ask any questions that you may have at any time, and do alert me if I miss out anything from the chat window. I wish I was a chameleon because my second screen is quite far away from my peripheral vision, and I apologize if I miss out your chat. I do give you the permission to unmute yourself and to alert me to this fact. So, without further ado, let's start here, the approach to mixing. Now here I want to share 3 things. I want to share the principle of mixing, as well as the hardware and software in mixing. Knowing the principle will guide the rest of your decisions concerning hardware and software. For those of us who are clueless as to what mixing is, let me provide a brief overview and definition. Now, when putting together a song, there are many sounds that have to be combined in a coherent way. Often these sounds will include drums, instruments, vocals, sound effects, etc., etc. They all have to share the same 3-dimensional box that is your audio spectrum. Or in other words, how you experience sound between your left and your right ears. Now, do you remember, for those of you who were here the last time, do you remember the principle? The principle that I shared was, what goes in must come out. I believe we can apply the same principle here in mixing. What goes in must come out. And now we focus on the middle part of this process. We've tracked our instruments from last time. I showed you how to do it on BandLab. Now today we're going to be doing it on Cakewalk. We're going to mix on Cakewalk, which is a different software but related. Hopefully to bring out a cohesive mixdown. A mixdown is the final single file, the piece of the MP3 or that WAV file that contains your whole song in one. So whereas when you tracked, you had guitar tracks, you had keyboard tracks, you had vocal tracks. In mixing and editing, we're going to bring everything down to one cohesive song, one file. So again, what goes in must come out. Let me provide a definition. Audio mixing is the process through which we adjust the volumes, the spacing, the depth, and the overall balance of sounds in order to get a clear sounding song. We want to balance and edit the audio that we've tracked so that the end listener can hear everything in the mix in the way that we want them to. Now, are the vocals loud enough to where we can understand the words clearly? Now, if not, then we need to either turn them up or we turn down the other instruments that are competing with the vocals. Now, are the drums overpowering the rest of the music? We can go in with an EQ to turn down certain frequencies that stand out from others to make sure the drums mix better. The key is to think like a producer. If you don't remember anything I said tonight, just remember that when you're involved in a creative endeavor like mixing and audio recording, you have to think like a producer. Put off that AV volunteer, musician, choir member hat and put on the producer hat. Previously, when you listen to a worship song, you might be more attuned to listening out for the lyrics rather than the sound of the music. Now, indeed, critiquing a worship song's lyrics is important. I'm not saying it's not. It is important if you're a worship pastor or a leader trying to determine if it's suitable for your congregation. But a producer focuses on the sounds of the music. This is why the planning stage for audio and video production is extra important. As a producer, The main goal of planning before anything else is to have a clear idea of what you want the song to sound like at the end. In other words, plan with the end in mind. Having a feel for what the end product is going to sound like will guide every other decision downstream. Does the song you have, does it have 3-part harmony? Then you need at least 3 singers. Do you want different atmospheric textures? Do you want the Holy Spirit pad sounds? Then you need to find a keyboardist who knows how to program those kind of pad sounds, or a guitarist who has the kind of gear for atmosphere. The primary skill of a producer is being able to dissect the sound of the song. What makes a song sound like that? For example, if you listen to a Bethel song, can you determine what makes it a Bethel song? So rather than, think of it this way, previously you might be inclined to be like a litmus test, a litmus paper with sounds. You think of either it's good or it's bad. Right now, we all are being called to listen to sounds like a pH meter. Where on the scale does the sound lie in? What effects are the guitars using? How many layers of the keyboard textures are there in the mix? Are there drum sounds? What drum sounds are there? Are they fat? Are they thin sounding? Are they resonant and boomy, or are they tight? Now, those of you who are music directors in our midst, you'll find it easier to make the switch to think like a producer. But for the rest of us, and I can see here from the participants list, I think there is quite a varied mixture of people here. For the rest of us, we have to start to appreciate the differences in musical production. Now, so let me address the people here who do not have any exposure to thinking like a producer. My question for you is simple. Do you have Spotify? And if you don't have Spotify, do you have YouTube? Because with Spotify and YouTube, you have access to a wealth of resources at your fingertips. So I encourage you to think like a producer. You need to listen widely. Don't just have your favorite album on loop. Go on and explore the different sounds from the years gone by. I want to encourage you that with time, you will be able to associate different time periods with different production techniques. For example, funk music from the 70s, they had a very dry and snappier drum kit sound with a busy and what they call the Motown bass groove. Pop music from the 80s had a very bright sheen to the vocals and instruments with the reverb sounds, because that was the time when they were coming out with different reverbs and these very, very textural sounds that were coming out. And now rock music, also different from the 90s. Rock music from the 90s had a strong emphasis on the organic quality of sound. You will hear very clear acoustic guitars. You will hear the singer singing the same thing twice in a track. Double track vocals. You will hear the from the left and right speakers. You can hear the same singer trying to sing the same lyrics. And because it is not very similar, the sound just gets, the vocal performance gets a lot bigger sounding because it's like a semi-choir effect. So these are the kinds of things that, these are kind of production nuances that are inherent in every single recording from time immemorial. On Spotify, they made it simple for you to explore these sounds. I found 3 different playlists, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and the playlist is quite extensive. They do have a lot of different types and genres of music within that time period. And of course, the reason why I think it's useful to listen to different time periods is because different time periods, the production techniques were kind of limited by the technology of the time. That makes sense, right? In the 60s, you didn't have a computer, you didn't have this digital audio workstation, you didn't have the guitar pedals on the floor. You kind of had to make do with like one microphone in the room. So 60s music is going to sound very different from the 70s when they started to experiment with multi-track recording, when they started to experiment with different ways of using the tape machine, for example, et cetera, et cetera. So all this kind of information and listening to, having a wide listening diet, all of this feeds into the end goal of being a versatile producer. Do you want the song to sound a certain way? Your ear is the best weapon in your arsenal. If you can listen to a sound, if you can analyze it, if you can break it down, you can recreate the sound using the tools at your disposal. And now that you have the producer hat on, here is a basic audio mixing workflow. And I know it looks quite intimidating now, and it probably is a lot of words right now, but I assure you, these words are going to make sense when we go into the live demo portion of tonight's class. And hopefully, and even if it doesn't make sense then, I encourage you to watch I encourage you to go back and watch the replay so that these terms become a bit more familiar to you. And I also want to emphasize that this workflow is not a MSM official school approved kind of workflow. It is my personal workflow. It's how I have over the years of mixing audio, over the years of being in the studio, not just for worship stuff, but for non-worship music. This is how I've seen producers and engineers work on sound, on recording stuff. And this is the stuff that I've seen and I've replicated in my own workflow. You may have your own workflow, your own nuances, your own style of thinking through how to mix a track. And that's perfectly fine. The end goal is the same. But very briefly here, there's planning, which is to have the end product in mind. In other words, when you approach a song, you already have, all right, I want this to have a thicker layer of reverb and ambience. I want the ambience to sound a certain way. I want the guitars to have a certain kind of brightness. I want the vocals to have a certain blending between the male and female voices, for example. Bussing is a technique of, instead of having to apply, let's say you have 15 tracks in a song, and that's actually a very low number. If you have 15 tracks in a song, rather than applying the same effect on, let's say, 5 or 6 different vocal tracks, bussing allows you to group those vocal tracks together. Let's say 6 vocal tracks, right? You apply one effect, it'll affect all 6 tracks together. That's bussing. This is useful because it will save your computer some DSP. It will save your processing on your computer and it won't crash. And which is very important, it won't crash because sometimes you've not saved your stuff yet. So this is all. Tonight, I'm giving you all the power tips to make sure that your stuff is still there even if your computer crashes. Okay, then there's balancing, which is finding the sweet spot to fit the tracks together. There are ways and there are techniques to basically ensure that the sound that you get is balanced. It's not too bass heavy, it's not too treble heavy, it's not too sharp in the mids, it's not too, there's some low end to cushion the sound. And all these things, that's what balancing is. And in panning, as I shared in the previous webinar, panning is where you put the audio track in the audio spectrum, in the stereo field from left to right. So a sound that is panned left will come out from the left speaker. A sound panned right will come out from the right speaker louder than the other side. So all that is I want you to imagine a live band on stage. When you see the live band on stage, they are all not in one straight line, like together like that. They are spread out. The bass, the drummers in the corner, the 2 guitarists are they're on different sides of the stage. The singers are in the middle. This is the kind of, that's what panning is. I mean, if I were to try and find an analogy. Now, steps 1 through 4 can be quite quick. Step 5 is where you're going to spend some of your time. Not a lot of time if you are crunched for time, but it's processing. And that's where you can get creative. Every one of you has a particular preference for sound. We are all built with, and because of our background, our upbringing, we all have preferences for different sounds. So we're all going to approach equalization, compression, and reverb very, very differently. I want to say that audio processing is the fun part because it is, even though it's 90% of the work, it is the fun part because that's where you can cut, you can boost, you can balance with EQ. Okay, equalizing, right? The short form, the shorthand abbreviation is EQ. So when I say I'm going to EQ that bass, I mean that I'm going to boost, cut, or balance frequencies of that bass. Compression, and compression has got to do with the level of dynamics in a sound. So a sound, you can be very soft, or you can be very loud. That kind of this kind of sound is what we call it's got a very high dynamic range because I got very soft and then I got very loud. Compression will help you to even out that dynamic range. So rather than have a very soft sound that's inaudible and a very loud sound that will stand out too much, it sort of evens everything out together. So that way it helps you to hear the softer parts of a song, and it helps you to balance out and not make the loud parts stand out too much. And reverb, this is possibly I think reverb is the one thing that stands out and characterizes each musical era. I believe that there's a 60s era kind of reverb. I believe there's a 70s era kind of reverb, 80s era reverb. And even right now in churches, church music like Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation, let's say the big three. The three of them have different approaches to reverb and have different sounds to reverb. To the point that if you try to put Hillsong, Bethel, and Elevation sounds together, like let's say you put the songs back to back, you will hear a difference as to how the sound is encased. It sounds like they are in the church. It sounds like they are in reverb. Basically, is what is the acoustic environment that they're trying to recreate. The fun thing about mixing is that you can recreate a space and fake it. The sound, we didn't record the vocals in a church. You can make it sound as if it is recorded in a church. This is applying different types of reverb. All that being said, it is very important that I now address, now that you know the principle of mixing, let us now address the hardware in mixing. And this is where, unfortunately, you're going to have to spend a bit of money if you haven't already done so from the previous webinar, where I said that you need to get a good audio interface, you need to get a good pair of headphones and a microphone, etc., etc. With mixing, this is the listening, the devices you use to listen to your mix is important. And you have to make sure you are listening to the mix with at least a pair of studio headphones. The ones that I have here, like you see, just very big cans over my ears. And the reason for that is these are a bit more neutral sounding. They don't have too much bass. They don't have too little bass. They don't have the high end. You still can hear the high end of the sound with these. If you use your Apple earphones, you're not going to be able to capture or hear the bass frequencies or the very high frequencies because it's just not made and designed that way. So this is the headphone side of things. Make sure you're listening to, get a pair of stereo headphones. I think you can still make do with your in-ear monitors. If those of you who are serving in church and have an in-ear monitoring system, your IEMs can work, but I don't really recommend it because some IEMs are bass heavy or they have a bit less high end because it's supposed to be in your ears all the time, right? So they want to protect your hearing by not having it that kind of sound. That's just the headphone side of things. You also need to consider the audio interface. There have been times where, and this is early on in my years of computer mixing, I would just use the headphone output from my PC to listen to the sound, and I'll use like these, $30 Audio-Technica commercial kind of earphones to mix, and it sounded okay when I used this, but when I tried to test the mix with other devices. So here's the thing: when you mix, right, you cannot just mix you cannot just listen to the mix on your PC. You should try to listen to the mix outside of your current workflow gear. Something more like a neutral third party, as it were. Your phone, your iPad, your tablet, your television. Because a lot of in my church, American Methodist Church, we still do pre-recorded services, and people watch the service from their televisions in the living room. Of course, today got smart TV, so I run my mixers through the TV and to hear how it sound like. If you use your sound card on your PC and this kind of earphones, you will get a very you will exaggerate the bass in your mix. There have been times when I mixed using this because I didn't have my interface, I didn't have my headphones. I just used the simple stuff I had around. The bass was overpowering, overwhelming. It sounded as if the TV was gonna rattle, And power tip: you can also listen to your mix in the car. Ever since I got a car, one of the biggest use for the car stereo has been to test my mixers, and it's something about the way the the car interior is a isolated environment. You don't hear things outside, and the speakers are a bit more powerful, so you can hear things in your mix that would not be possible if you're listening through, let's say, your iPhone earphones are, So, so the low end is going to be an issue with your commercial products or your iPhone earphones. So do invest in a pair of studio headphones and an interface. Some of these companies come up with bundles. You can buy their brand of headphones and their brand of audio interface, like the Scarlett, like the Focusrite Scarlett. There's a like singer-songwriter pack that they provide microphone, headphone, and interface. All these kind of things, put together. And it's convenient because it is definitely a step up from listening through your headphone output on the PC. So take note of that. With that being said, time now is 8:30. Excellent, because I do want to spend a lot of time on the live demo of Cakewalk. Now, last session, we looked at BandLab, which is the free browser-based digital audio workstation. And that was where I shared with you that this how I involve my musicians on my worship team. I get them all to sign up on BandLab. I get them all to create accounts. I add them to the virtual band of Methodist Church, and we work on projects together. I send out the backing track with the click track and the like a drum guide track, and my musicians layer their tracks over that, and everyone can work on the track. Everyone can work on the song, and at the end of the day, or after the deadline, I set a deadline. Okay, every week, Saturday, the song, the set list comes out. I'll do a band meeting on Sunday, guys. You're going to record the song, and please work on the project. Thursday, the week after Thursday, I start to export the tracks that they've recorded. So tonight, I'm going to show you what happens on that Thursday night or that Friday morning when I have to start mixing the sound from BandLab. Cakewalk is a digital audio workstation that is also related to BandLab in that they come from the same company. So some of the things that you find familiar, if you're familiar with BandLab and you'll be using it, some of the things will be familiar in Cakewalk. And to the extra benefit, if you're familiar with Cakewalk as a digital audio workstation, you're going to be familiar with other DAWs as well. GarageBand is an easier DAW than Cakewalk. Logic is on the same level of difficulty as Cakewalk, I think. Reaper and Sonar are also kind of like on the same level. So tonight the software is not going to be easy. It's going to be quite intimidating at first. So let me warn you here, when you see the plethora of options on the screen and the many buttons and knobs and things to click on, and if you panic, don't worry, take a deep breath, breathe out. It's okay, because once you're able to acclimatize to the DAW environment in Cakewalk, you're going to be able to it's going to be easier for you to acclimatize to other workstations. All right, so I listed my pros and cons of why I like it and why I don't, and the things that I don't like about Cakewalk. I like it because it is something that's a bit lighter on the CPU. I don't know why, and maybe it's only my computer, I guess. But when I talk to my other church members who use Cakewalk, we all seem to agree that Cakewalk has lower CPU usage. If you do have a smaller, lightweight computer, this might be one of those DAWs a full-featured DAW that works for you. The problem with so you can download other trial software like say Ableton Live Lite or not Ableton. You can download Reaper. You can download Sonar or PreSonus, I think, like Studio One PreSonus. These DAWs are limited because they are free and they're the light versions of it. And if you want to have the full features of the DAW, you need to buy the license. Cakewalk is fully featured without having to buy anything. You don't need to upgrade at all. You can do everything. All the features of Cakewalk are available to you for free. That's why I like it. That's the best reason why I like it. This is very important because when I mix a song, when I track and mix a song, I am very much I deal with with many tracks. I track a lot. I have 16, 20, 30 tracks in any given song. If I use one of those free DAWs, you're going to be limited to, let's say, 8 tracks. You're going to be limited to how many effects you can chain together in the signal chain. I can probably still mix with 8 tracks, but if you give me a choice, I want more tracks. I want more space to work with. But then again, it's really up to you. If you want to use an easier, quote unquote, easier DAW, Reaper, PreSonus Studio One, they are slightly easier than Cakewalk, but they're limited in that you only have, I think, 8 to 16 tracks. Yeah. When you open Cakewalk, you'll be greeted with this screen. This is the Start Up screen. Similar to when you open BandLab last time, you'll be greeted with what instrument do you want to start off with. In Cakewalk, they'll start you off with workspaces. So this is the different kind of working environments that you can work with in Cakewalk. For now, if you're completely new to Cakewalk, I'm going to suggest that we start with an empty project. So open Cakewalk. Let's do it step by step. Open Cakewalk. You see the welcome screen. I'm going to suggest opening an empty project because I want to show you everything from scratch, ground zero. All right. It looks intimidating, right? All right. If you remember your BandLab, BandLab has the tracks that are arranged in rows from left to right. So here is the track control. Here is the timeline with the playhead. Right, it looks empty now because we haven't added any audio sounds yet. Okay. Let us go to the top part of this area here. I'm going to show you from left to right what's going on, and I'll move this around. Can I move it here? Okay. Okay, you all can see up here, right? There's nothing blocking the screen here, right? Anyone can give me a thumbs up or a chat or something? Okay, I'm going to proceed as if it's visible. If not visible, you all let me know, okay? The top left-hand side here is kind of like how, if you're familiar with Microsoft Office, all your important things are on the top left-hand corner. Your save button, your save as button, these are the most important buttons that you will have in Cakewalk. Because this Cakewalk is not a perfect program. It will crash no matter how good a system you're using. DAW crashing on you is a very common occurrence. So make sure you're saving frequently. Make sure you're pressing Control S every other time that you're not. You have a break, or when you're in the middle of something, when you finish something, just quickly do a Control S to save, because you never know when something's going to crash your computer. That's the most important button here. You don't need to worry too much about this section or this section yet. Similar to BandLab, these are the transport controls, and the transport controls will help you to rewind to the start position or fast forward to the end position of the song, pause and play. And the keyboard shortcut to play is spacebar. So you can see as soon as I press spacebar, the playhead moves from left to right, indicating the advancement of time. So now you see over here, this tells you which part of which part in time you're at. So this is 5 seconds, 6 seconds, etc., etc., etc. Down here is where you will key in information for the metronome, which is bottom for the click track, and as well as to match the song. It's important to match the song, the tempo of the song, because if you don't, it becomes harder to cut out or like edit sound pieces of the sound at certain like, let's say if you wanted to cut out the breath sound just before the singer sings a note, right? If you don't key in the same tempo as the song, Cakewalk is going to not be very accurate with calculating where to stop. It will make sense later when I show you an actual sound clip, okay? For the time being, don't need to worry too much about these buttons here either, except that if you click on, These are the master buttons, the master mute, master solo, and master bypass of all studio effects. So this will help you to, let's say, if you need to, I don't know, for some reason, mute everything at once. You can, if you have 2 tracks to work with in a song, you can mute 1 track, that's all right. Mute 2 tracks, that's okay. If you have 50 tracks in a song, you want to mute everything, it's going to be a bit of a hassle to do one by one. So they designed the buttons here to mute everything at once or to solo everything at once. And I'll show you what those buttons do later. 3 more things actually I want to show you. Over here, there's a performance tab here. It's not rating your performance as to, oh yeah, you're mixing A+. No. This performance tab here indicates what is happening on your computer. It will show you this little progress bar, right? It shows you the system memory usage and your hard disk usage. Cakewalk is, even though, okay, so right now you see my system memory usage is 34%. That's actually a bit on the high side, but that's because I also have Zoom running in the background. I've got the audio being fed into the interface. I've got my teleprompter camera set up here. Usually it's around 20 to 25%. So 34% is a bit on the high side. That's only because my system is running a lot of things right now. You shouldn't go beyond 25 to 30%. On a slower, less powerful computer, you might reach 50%. And if you're using those really intensive effects on tracks, you might go even beyond that. And I don't recommend that because it makes everything choppy. It makes everything, some glitches will happen and start to occur. So when you start hearing glitches like or like, something, suddenly your audio stops like that, look at your system usage, look at look at the performance tab here. Something might be clogging up your resources, something might be going wrong in the CPU side of things. You might have to save, close, end task, open again. Hopefully the problem resolves itself. There's over here, the top right hand corner, there's something called mix, and this is the workspace selection. In Cakewalk, you're able to reconfigure the tabs on the screen to fit your needs in different working environments. You could try to click your way through the different workspaces to see what's there, what's not there. I just recommend to stick on mix. Whatever happens, just click on mix, because this is what we are using Cakewalk for. We're using Cakewalk to mix our audio. And then last but not least, that is the export button right here. When you're done mixing your song, when you are happy with your product, you click on this and it will bring you to a few selection screens as to what you can export the song as, your one MP3 file, your one WAV file, etc., etc. Now these are the formats that we have. For our usage, I'm gonna say that your video editor and those people downstream from us, from after you mix it, right, and you want to send off to the mastering team or the video editing team, it's better to give them a WAV file, WAV, over here, this one here, because it's uncompressed audio. It's the highest quality audio. If you send them MP3, you're going to start to have audio compression. You're going to start to have the kind of data compression. It's not just audio compression, but data compression. So the file size is smaller, yes, but it's going to sound a bit less high res. Yeah, you couldn't hear it right now because it's over Zoom, right? But if there is a big difference between MP3 and WAV files if you hear them separately back to back. Anyway, all that being said and done, if you don't remember anything that I said, and if nothing sticks to you right now, right at the bottom right hand corner here, there's something called the help module, and the help module will tell you, as you hover over something or you click something, it will tell you what you're clicking on. It will tell you, give you a description. So performance module lets you monitor your computer's performance with CPU, disk, and memory activity. If you click on, let's say, the gradually fast forward to, to the project, pause, resume playback. If you're unsure of what any of these buttons do, hover over the particular button or that. Look at the bottom right corner. That's where your help module is, and then you can scroll and see what's happening. And something pretty cool too. They let you know the keyboard shortcut. Let's say if you were to hover over record, right? Right click, to record is R, and to step record is Shift R. So pretty cool stuff, pretty good. And this is not present in other DAWs. I do not remember this in Reaper or so. I think they probably do have it, but it's just different. I just like it here because they show it to you right at the interface itself. I believe GarageBand's interface is similar, but if you want to help, right, you need to click on the question mark or the help icon thing, and then you the whatever that can be helped, whatever has got a help icon, it will show up on the screen with a question mark on each of the things that you can click on. So not so intuitive and not as direct as looking, glancing at the bottom right corner. So a lot of words I just said, right? Okay, let's start to import audio. So let's assume that this is Thursday night, and as the producer for the track for this week's recording, I told the guys in church, okay, you guys have until Thursday morning to record. They finished recording. You are now ready to export your audio. So I'm just gonna do this demo, can we move this back here? So let's open in the mix editor because I want to see how many people recorded. Oh, cool. Tim, Sherilyn, and 2 electric guitars were recorded, and the backing track is here. So that you can hear the I love you, Lord. Okay, cool. They recorded. All my life you have been faithful. Okay, right now, you can potentially mix in BandLab as well, but I don't recommend it because the tools are quite limited. And as you can hear, the reason why we need to mix is right now the guitars are way too loud and the vocals are way too soft. So we're going to have to start to export things out into Cakewalk so we can work on the tracks individually. On each of these tracks, the top right-hand corner, when you click on it, it brings you a lot of options. Export track as wave. This will allow you to save the file. So export audio, and then I'll do this for each of the tracks. So if you have 10 tracks from your 10 musicians on your team, you're gonna have 10 different files to work with. So after everything is done, you've exported all your projects. Fine, exit. Okay. Now once you have exported all your tracks, I will normally put them in a folder, and just so that you can organize things, because I am a bit, I like to organize myself that way. These are the scary thing is that these are not all the tracks that are here. These are some of the tracks. With Cakewalk, you can drag and drop the track into the workspace and it will load up. So let's look at the acoustic. When you drag and drop a track into Cakewalk, you will say, "Aya, why is it so small? I cannot see anything." Don't panic. On the track, which is a track, is represented as a row in the workspace. You can click on this button here, restore strip size, minimize, restore strip size. Click on it, and you start to you see you can see that your audio file is now visible. Now, I told you before that it is recommended to change the project tempo to the correct tempo of the song, because and I said it's important because I'm gonna turn on the metronome here just for demonstration, right? If you don't change the tempo settings in Cakewalk and you upload and you like port over a file, this is what happens. Okay. Excuse me, something did not happen. Is it working? Okay. impossible to work with, right? Because your click is different from the musician track this at 63 BPM, but your tempo is way off. So you do have to change it to. I do strongly recommend changing it so that way you will hear that they sync. Okay, what I did here so a Cakewalk's default view is like this. You won't see anything at the bottom. You need to press a button. You need to press the letter D to bring up this the channel strip here. So if you imagine with me, remember the time you go to church and you go to the AV booth and the sound guys at the AV booth and you see the mixer. The mixer they were like fiddle with the sliders and the faders and the knobs on the mixer. This is a virtual channel strip which operates the same way as the mixer in church. The slider here controls the volume of the sound file, and you've got controls all up here to do things to the sound. For example, it's too loud, I want to make it softer. I pull down, click and drag the slider down to make it softer. If I'm particularly mean to the acoustic guitar player, I don't like your sound at all, I can mute him. And that was clicking on the mute button. If you're especially mean now that's the mute button, that's a slider. I'm going to show you what the solo button does. So I'm going to add in a few more tracks to let you hear what they do. I'm going to, let's say, bring in these tracks here. Again, you drag and drop the tracks over, like they're too small, cannot see anything. Don't panic. Click on the expand button right here. Then you can hear that the keyboardist starts on bar 15. Yep, so now you can hear that the piano and the guitar is very loud, right? Because when it's loaded, these are at unity gain, which is a term that just means that it's at 0 dB. You can bring it down. Okay, what happens to solo a track? Let's say I want to hear what the guitar is doing without the rest of the keyboard or the aux keyboard playing, right? I'll click on the S button to only hear what the guitarist is playing. So you hear it's only just the guitar player, right? If I unpress the solo button, so those are what these controls do here. So remember, you want to increase the volume of the track, you can go down here to increase, decrease. If you want to mute the track, that's the M button there. You want to solo the track, that's the S. That's what the S stands for. Okay, let me bring up mine. Can you remember I said that some of you guys, I did say to have the 2 slides ready, right? And that was to, let's see. Yeah, the 2 slides that you have, I sent 2 slides earlier from part of my slide deck so that you can have them referenced right now. So I want you to have those 2 slides, the slide that contains the slide that contains my process, the audio process, and the slide that contains the EQ, compression, and reverb. If you don't have it, I'm gonna try and let's see, can I do this right now? If you don't have it, I'm gonna try to add it into the chat group. Yeah, if you don't have the slides, I sent 2 pictures into the chat for you to refer to. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to open those up, and while you're opening it up, I need a bit of a water break. So get ready those 2 slides. At this point, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. you should be able to. You should see that I have two slides. One will have the points being planning, busing, balancing, panning, processing, and the next slide should be on EQ, compression, and reverb. So I want you to have slide number 1 with you, reference of you, have it on your phone, have it on your iPad or something together with your computer, right? So you can see two things at once. Or if you're techie like me, you have two screens, have one on one screen and watch this on the other screen. Okay? Okay, you have no questions, and if everyone's okay, I'm going to proceed on with what I want to, the rest of what I'm going to share tonight. All right, we have currently at 3 tracks right here. I'm going to load the rest of the tracks in, and you're going to see that, and I'm going to put everything at unity gain so that you can hear what's the raw sound of the track. Okay, and I'll be doing this. Again, as I'm doing this, feel free to stop me if you have any questions, okay? So let me start to add tracks. This is main keys, extra keys. I'm going to put in the... I'm going to put in my... I'm going to put on E1, E2. I'm going to put in my bass. Actually, no, I'm not going to put in bass yet. Sorry. Let's see. Okay, let's just work with this for now. Okay, one pro tip that I have for you is that when you're working with a track as big as this, right? And actually this is only 7 tracks. I still have like a lot more tracks to go in. One thing I like to do is I like to add in a guide track and have that at the very top so that I know which section it is I'm working on at any point in time. I can also quickly visually identify which part of the song that I'm working on. And the guide track, okay, if I just bring everything down here. The guide track is the guide track is a track that tells you the section that's coming up. So I'm going to solo this, and I'm going to put this lower so no one's ears dies.
1, 2, intro, 2, 3, 4.
And I just have this, I make this way beforehand. This is the planning phase, right? I'll make the guide track so it's easier for me to, I use it to work not just with the musicians when they're tracking, but also in the studio, also on this computer when I need to mix, because that gives me a handle as to which part of the song I'm working on. Let's say you import all your tracks, right? And you realize that you don't like the way that they are currently sitting. Like, I wish that the guide track was on top. I wish that the drum track was also on top. What do I do here? And I also don't like the way things are named, because Cakewalk will automatically name your files. And the way to change that is you can hover over the name, right? The name of the track right here on the channel strip on this side of the workstation. If you double click it, you can bring up the editor to change the name. So I like to just keep things E1 was actually EG1 and E2 was EG2. I'm doing this live, so it might be a bit awkward. Okay, perc is short for percussion, so that's your shaker, etc. guide. Now, I don't like the guide track is all the way at the bottom of my station here, so I'm going to move it. And to move the track on a different part here, you see how there's a sound wave looking icon? Click on that, click and hold, and drag it to the very top. And I dragged the wrong one. I dragged the drums. So sometimes you need to like aim a bit, you know. Yeah, the guide track's there, and percussion I want to bring up here lah. I didn't do that. No, that's bass. Hey. Yeah, maybe my mouse is too sensitive or something. Okay, so anyway, Guide track, drum, percussion, bass. Yeah, I do like the way this is pan out so far. All right. So we have, now that we have soundtracks here, I'm going to show you what busing means. Okay, you have 10 tracks. Wow, so many tracks at one go. And you have auxiliary keyboard, keyboard 1, and keyboard 2. Actually, I do have one extra keys. Is it here? Did I put extra keys? No, yeah, that's keys 2. Oh, yeah. Aux keys and keys 2. They're all roughly keyboard sounds. I want to treat, instead of applying the same effect on 3 times on 3 different tracks, I can group them together so that I can treat them all the same way. If you look to the bottom right hand corner of the channel strip area, right, you'll see this. These are separate from the right hand side is separate from the left hand side, because the right hand side is where your master is, and it's also where the buses sit. And the bus, as I said before, is, imagine you want to travel from point A to point B, and you need to move, like, a school trip. You need to move students from point A to point B. You don't send 30 cars to pick up the 30 students to send them all to the same destination. You put the 30 kids into one bus and move them all together at one time. This is the idea of busing. It's to group the tracks together. And what I'll do is, and these buses over here, they are all freely assignable except for the master and the metronome. So bus C onwards, you can do whatever you want with it. Default is preview, you can change it. I'm going to change it to keys. So I'm going to treat my keyboards with the same effects. And the way to route the channels, like, the aux keyboard, key 1, key 2, into the bus, you need to look at these. You see how there's an in out at the bottom of the strip here, the channel strip here? The I button here is for in, which is your microphone, instrument, or what have you. The O button here is for output, and this is currently routed to the master bus. So it will not go through the metronome bus or the keyboard bus, it will go straight to the master output. To bus tracks together, you can click on the output, select keyboard, because this is your keyboard bus C. So keyboard, keyboard, keyboard. All right. So right now, with no effects applied, and with the keyboard tracks being sent to the keyboard bus, I can now use this volume fader to act like a master volume for all these tracks together. So for example, if I were to play, so that's what happens when you bus things together. Okay. All right. So balancing. So now that we've bussed the keyboards together, I'm going to create one more for the electric guitar, just so that you can just so I can group the things a bit better. So I'll create one more bus. To create a bus, you move your mouse to the right hand side and the empty space next to the last bus. Right click, insert stereo bus. So you've created a new bus. And for this one, I'm going to put guitars, just because I can. Guitars. The guitars will apply to, now, if for sake of simplicity, I'm going to send the electric guitars to the guitar. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to make it a bit easier to see electric guitars. So that way, I can also change the volume, master volume of the electric guitar layers. Now you can hear the metronome in the background, right? When I mix, I may not need to hit the metronome all the time. So on the metronome bus, which is routed internally in Cakewalk's software, I can press the mute button here, and you will not hear the click the metronome anymore. Now that we've bussed and we've sorted the tracks, right? Now it's time to balance, and the initial balance is I want to make sure that there are sounds that are not too loud or overbearing. I want to make sure that I have something that's more even sounding. So actually, I balance and I pan kind of at the same time. On paper, I put down balancing, then panning, but it kind of is like the two things happen at the same time, because you cannot find a good balance until you've panned the instruments. And the reason why I say that is, okay, you can't hear it right now because it's over Zoom, but when you watch the replay on YouTube, I want you to hear the difference that the panning makes. Because right now, everything's in dead center, and that means a pan to dead center. Your pan control is in the middle of the channel strip. If you keep the pan at 0, don't change everything, everything's dead center, it sounds like you've arranged all the instruments in one straight line and they're playing at you, and they're blasting everything at you. It's very crowded, it's very cramped, and it's very fatiguing on the ear to have a very, very thick center layer. So what I will do is I'll start to move everything down. In fact, my starting point and my general starting point is that I move everything down to -6 to -9 dB on the channel strip. So I'll move my drums down to, let's say, -9 first. I mean, I'm just doing this based on like a general starting point. There's no hard and fast rule. My acoustic, I don't like it that high either. Aux can be here. The thing about aux is the aux player played organ, so the organ sometimes is a bit too strident sounding, very, very bright. So you might want to bring it down in the mix a little bit. Key 1, key 2 is a pad, I think. So even at this stage, I'm renaming stuff so that I know what it is that I'm recording. Renaming tracks may seem like a very trivial thing, but trust me, when you have EG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you're going to start to realize, okay, which one is the pitch shifter? Did I put the pitch shifter in EG4? Did I put the tremolo in EG5? Try to be a bit more descriptive with your track name, your track naming, track numbering. That's what I'm saying. So with this, let's see. Okay, the drums are still a bit loud, so I'm going to bring that a little bit further down. Now, at this stage, I'm going to start to pan stuff, and I know that just because my ears like it, I like to put my acoustic somewhere towards the left, so I'm going to put it right here. Electric guitars, I like to put them very far out. If you have enough electric guitar tracks, you can start to even do things like panning hard left and hard right, which means that EG1 only comes out of the left speaker, EG2 only comes out of the right speaker. And I don't think I hear this now, but eventually over YouTube, you'll be able to hear that you have widened the spirit. I spread out instruments on the stereo field, and it's a bit less fatiguing on the ear. Now, I didn't pan the keyboard, the pad. I didn't pan the keyboards, and I didn't pan the bass. And there's a reason for that, because with the keyboards and the keyboards are stereo instruments, and because the stereo instruments, when you record a stereo, the output right in stereo, the keyboard already has stereo information within the recording. Some sounds there will be some movement of sound from the left speaker to the right speaker if they put like a phaser on. There'll be like some of those pad sounds, the ethereal kind of like sounds. They also do introduce some stereo movement from left to right, some swirly whirly things. That's why I don't pan the keyboards left or like pan them at all. If there's an acoustic piano, I might pan it slightly left, slightly right, depending on where I've already panned the other instruments. So this is what you want to do. To balance things out on the stereo field, you have to take note of where the instruments lie, which level of pan you put them. If you put an instrument on like that's 40% left, maybe you need to put the other instrument 40% right to balance the sound out. Of course, some of the instruments sound different when you pan them. So you might have to, it's not a simple formula of like, 40% left, that means the other instrument is 40% right. Sometimes you might have to adjust each of the pan levels just to get the sound right in between your left and right ear. Drums and percussion, I also don't mix. I also don't change the pan settings because my drummers already have their sounds pre-mixed. At this stage in time, I just get the big drum file. My drummers, when they record on a electric drum kit, which means that the drum kit, the drum module will already assign like, okay, kick bass is going to be slightly off center, tom 1 is going to be slightly on slightly left, floor tom is going to be further on the right hand side. Some of these drum modules already have stereo information like that, and this is not a drum module, this is not digital drums, this is acoustic drums, and this was recorded in church. And my church staff is also a drummer, and he helps my church members record. And when they do record, he helps me to do a mix of the drums before sending it to me. So that's why I don't change the pen levels here. But if you do have individual drum stems, if you have your hi-hat, if it's not just one track, right? If you have hi-hat, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3, kick, cymbal 1, overhead 1, overhead 2, that's like rough, that's 8 to 10 tracks, so just for the drums. And you have to treat them all individually, so pan them, mix the volume right, etc., etc. If you're overwhelmed at this point, it might be best to start off with simple recordings. Like, let's say your drummer's got an electronic drum set, ask him to submit a recording with the electric drum set. It's a lot easier to mix than a full acoustic kit. So maybe your path for growth as a recording engineer, or like doing stuff like this, is you start off with the electronic drums because it's easiest to manage just one track. Then you slowly increase your repertoire, be able to mix 2 microphones recording a drum set. Then you increase to every drum part is 1 track, and then before you know it, you'll be able to mix 10, 12 tracks for the drums easily. Okay, I wouldn't say easily, it's still a big challenge, and it's a lot of time. One thing to note, this kind of work is time intensive, and half the time I am struggling to push things out to reach the deadline of, let's say, of Saturday morning, because that's when my full-time staff puts together the service video. Between Thursday night and Saturday morning, I only have, I also work. I'm working as well, so I only maybe have 2-3 hours to mix, master, and edit the video. A lot of the times I'm just guessing. I'm putting a very rough mix together. If I had more time, I would, I would balance the left and right bit more. I'll try to EQ out some frequencies that are a bit weird sounding. But many times I don't have the time, and you have to live with that kind of constraint. If you're the kind who is very gets very like, I wish I could more time, hey, full-time stuff, you give me until Saturday night, that you can't do that with a time crunch. And make do with what you have. Submit yourself to the Lord, put in your best foot forward. If the rough mix is the only amount of time you can put in to produce a piece of work, so be it. I have had it's funny because when I think about it, because the stuff I mix for church ends up being played in church as well, like as filler music or as like pre-service or post-service music. And when I hear some of my tracks, especially my earlier tracks, I'm like, oh, I don't like to listen to it, because it's like there's some mix decisions that I made in a haste because I didn't have enough time to mix them. There's some mistakes that I didn't cut out because they were there. I'm like, ayo, very malu leh. But it never fails to surprise me that every time I think that it's terrible and like, oh, this should never see the light of day again, someone will come up to me and encourage me, saying that they've been touched by God because of the music, because this is the song that they needed for the season. I hear the mistakes, but maybe the people in the congregation don't hear those mistakes as obviously as you do. So that's the danger of being the creative type and working on stuff for church and putting it out there, right? You're ultra wary of the mistakes. You're ultra wary of the things that went wrong in the mix. But if I were to encourage you, I think it's all part of the process, and I think God lets these mistakes happen, and we are finite creatures, and the Holy Spirit will work through the notes, work through the music, work through even the mistakes. And what Holy Spirit's work on us mortal men is we can put in the weirdest sounding, most out of tune music, and I still think the Holy Spirit will still be able to work something in us and through us. So let's hold fast to that hope. So if you think your mix sounds like rubbish, and your first time doing it probably is a bit more rubbish, but take heart. The Holy Spirit is going to use that, and my encouragement to you is that you are not stuck at that level forever. You will move and progress beyond a point that things sound better. It took me a long time to reach where I am right now with mixing. So if you don't get it in the first night tonight, if you don't get it in next week, that's okay. It took me 10 years of mixing audio, and I still think I'm very amateur compared to like the professionals out there. Okay, sorry, long story. Time is 9:20. I need to speed up. Okay, where were we? Okay, so now stereo panning left, right. Electric guitars are here and there. All right, so now let's start to introduce the vocals, and the vocals is going to be you have to start to make mix decisions that will affect your whole workflow. For praise and worship music, the most important component in the music is the voice. This is true of the choir, this is true of the contemporary band, this is also true in the recorded environment. So let us start to introduce our singers, and I only have two singers this time around because I'm supposed to record overdubs, but I have not done it yet because time. And let's see, am I able to? Oh, here we go. All right, so I'm going to drag and drop over my singers, my two singers. And just now you heard them. This was a song that we used to worship with. So I'm going to put Tim and Sherilyn. And like what I did before, okay, put them a little bit down because that's my rough ballpark of my starting point. Like I told you, bus together, right? So I'm going to create another bus for vocals. And I'm going to click on the output to route the tracks to the vocals. Then I can start to bring them up and down. So vocalists, your vocal layer, whatever is going to be in the center is going to be the most audible in the mix. So with lead vocals, I tend to put them roughly in the center, or like either dead center or slightly off center. And the reason why I'm doing it slightly off center for these two guys is because, in goodness of God, the way that Bethel, and this is where understanding and critiquing music comes into play. Bethel likes to have a leader and a co-leader. Raise a Hallelujah, for example, you have to have you can't just have one worship leader. You actually have like two worship leaders in a sense, because the female singer will sing a specific part, the male singer sings a specific part. So it's kind of like there are no support singers, everyone's a worship leader kind of a mentality. And if you know this, you can influence, this will influence your mix decision right here. So I have Tim and Sherilyn roughly in the center because two of them are not, it's not like a main worship leader / support singer. They are actually co-leading in a sense. So let's just hear how they sound like without any, let's see, I've panned them. I've tried to do a normal balance. Okay, let's hear them right now.
Verse.
Okay, so you can hear that the volume is actually very, very soft. And even if I were to make them at unity gain 0 dB on the faders, it's still very soft. So one thing you have to start doing is to start to process. So once now you, if you have my slides open, the two pictures, right, go to slide 2, where I'm going to talk about EQ, compression, reverb. And much like what I shared about panning and balancing, they kind of happen at the same time. I process also things at the same time. I EQ, I compress. They're kind of like one step for me, or they're kind of like part of the same step, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do a few things to the vocals to treat them better. Number one, to make it louder. Number two, number two is to make them sit better in the mix. All right. So the channel strips, if you look at the channel strips, at there's actually a little bar that you can click up here to drag up. You can see that there's a lot more parameters you can play with. The one thing I want to show you right now is the FX tab. It stands for effects. FX is not foreign exchange, whatever, but it's effects, and this is where you start to process the tracks to make it sound better. You can change a lot of properties of the sound. If you click on plus button on the FX here, it brings up, you can insert you can insert effects. Now effects, there's a specific term for this, and it's called VST. And they're called plugins because it's kind of like taking an outboard piece of gear and then you insert into the chain. Remember signal chain I taught you last session? Now same effect, same idea here. The VSTs and the plugins that you have, your plugin collection is going to be personal to you. There are going to be you can find free ones which have limitations, but they're obviously free. You can use paid ones which are a lot more feature rich. They do a lot more things, and the difference also is because some of these paid plugins automate, are very automatic in the settings. So I like to, my current collection is quite large, only because I've been doing this for a while. I have amassed both paid and free plugins. Some are very cheap, for the paid stuff. Some are very expensive. So, and the general rule applies: you get what you pay for. I think I've spent $600 to $800 on plugins, and of course you wait for Cyber Monday, or you wait for Good Friday. You wait for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. The deals are very good. Some will have 50% off, some will have 90% off. So wait for those deals, and then they'll be quite good. In particular, I like the Waves plugins, and I'll link it later in the PowerPoint slide, so you don't have to copy it down right now. But Waves is a company that makes, I think, quite good plugins. They're not the cheapest, but they are really good in what they do. But for tonight's purposes, I'm going to use free plugins from Melda Audio. It's another company from Europe, and they're free stuff, and it's actually quite good. Let's first do let's first look at the equalizer, right? So with the so again, to reach the stage, you hover your mouse over the FX tab here, press the plus button, and you add insert audio effects, and then you can choose the things that you want. I have so for Cakewalk, the top part here is the most used plugins, so they will show up here because you frequently use it. But if I were to, let's say I wanted to put a distortion on, I can use the various plugins that I have to introduce in the signal chain. So the reason why I like the Melda Audio plugins is because they are quite feature rich. The equalizer in particular shows how shall I put it? It's very lively in the sense that you can see the frequencies that are happening, that are in the sound. So I'm gonna just show you what I mean lah.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands.
Is there a freeze button that I can?
From the moment that I wake up.
Okay, so what's all this? This reminds me of my mathematics in secondary school. Y equals to x squared. It does help, that kind of information, but okay. So what's happening here is that this is a spectrum analyzer. It will show you what frequencies are being the frequencies that are present in a sound. And for vocals, this is my singer's like spectrogram, the frequencies that are in her voice. In particular, I like this portion right here, the bottom part here, because this bottom part tells me the concentration of frequencies. You can see that her voice is heavy in the 50 to 500 hertz. There's also a concentration around here. It's useful because if you know that there is a frequency hotspot, there's something that sounds very weird. It might be that there's too much of a spike in a certain part of EQ, and this helps me to identify very quickly where those EQ spikes are. When you record and you send over a track, the microphone picks up every frequency to various degrees, as you can see. Now, we don't need all these frequencies. And one thing about mixing is that you must be very, very liberal with cutting things out. Cut out all the excess, all the extra things that you don't need. And the way to do that is you see these numbers here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can start to sculpt the EQ and activate these EQ bands by double-clicking on them. What I like to do is I like to drag the first band all the way down to as much as I can. This is essentially doing high passing. It's a technical term. Anyway, when you do this, you're getting rid of all the frequencies past this point here. So over here, past this point here, there won't be any more. The sound, the frequencies in that sound are no longer in the recording. And I like to do for voice in particular, I like to raise a little bit here, because this part of the frequency spectrum is where the brightness sort of the vocals come in. And particularly if you are mixing in a very dense band mix, like a Bethel song like this, I think this is only 12 tracks, right? But I think my final track count is like 17 or 18 tracks. It's very easy to get lost in the mix. So I like to have this slightly raised here so that it shines a little bit more. I like to cut out every frequency from the starting point is 50 hertz, but you can be a bit more aggressive if the female voice, it's a bit higher, the male voice is a bit lower. Sherilyn actually has a little bit of a thicker and lower timbre, so I'm a bit hesitant to cut out so much. It would be so aggressive. So let's just hear. Yeah.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me.
The low end's a bit more clean.
All my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Okay, so we don't have time to do it here, but what I'm doing right now is I'm sculpting her EQ just a little bit more. I like to push her vocal in the upper mids because, number one, that's where the body of the voice is. And I do a dip somewhere here also to cut out some of that. There's a bit of a thump. I'm not sure if you can I don't think you can hear it here, but there's a bit of thump because she actually uses this microphone, and this microphone is a bit like bass heavy or a bit more like can be a bit muddy. So I tried to sculpt it a little bit more so that she's not so like unclear in the mix. Now you see that this is going to be a bit different when I start to EQ other instruments.
If you have been fair. All my life you have been so good.
So you can't hear it right now. You probably can't hear it, but because I raised up this frequency right here, both Timothy and Sherilyn's voice is a little bit clearer in the mix. So this is just that's just the EQ. So let's very quickly, 9:33. I need to start speeding up. So you've EQ'd. Now let's compress. And with compression, you could also use Melda Audio's compressor, which where is it? Nope. I want to minimize that. Okay. Your top right hand corner here of the workspace is where all your effects, your plugins, this is where they live, where you can access them quite easily. They are currently organized by type. Let's say I want to use the M compressor, and I remember it as the M comp. Yeah, you can search, type in it's like control find for plugins. So, okay, one thing I like about Melda Audio is that you don't really have to, you should be learning what all the knobs do, but if you don't know what they do and you want to start off, and Melda Audio comes with presets. If you click the preset tab, you can start to hear, you have access to all these different presets that they designed initially as a starting point. You might be tempted to go with voice, but no, this is the speaking voice. This compression is dialed for talks, for interviews, etc., etc. You want to go with sing. And so when you double click on let's say sing 1, then you start to see the parameters change. And what they've done is they have made this a 5:1 ratio. Okay, so this is a milder compression, which is good because I think they are louder now. They should be louder.
Oh, I will sing of the goodness.
You start to increase you can also increase the output.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am in, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice.
Yeah, so that automatically made things a lot easier to hear. You can Sherilyn isn't being drowned out by the rest of the instruments. Tim isn't drowned out by Sherilyn now because they're both being compressed, and you can start to hear them separate from the rest of the instrument. I don't have time to show everything right now, but I would have done a similar process for the rest of the buses. To dial out the unnecessary frequencies that you don't need. So for example, I'm going to, starting point is I always carve out 50 hertz because you don't want to compete with the kick bass, you don't want to compete with the bass guitar. So this is where I like to use this as a sculpting tool. Keyboards, you may or may not need to do this. Let's say, okay, I'm just going to do a simple, cutting out the low frequencies.
So
yeah, so you can't hear it right now, but what happened when I did this, what happened when I used the equalizer is that every time, you know how when a piano, when you play diamonds on the piano, you hit the piano, and that there's a bit of like a bass oomph when I realize I'm trying to talk in very non-technical terms, but when whenever the piano plays something like a hard hit, like playing diamonds, like bang bang whole notes, that kind of force on the piano sometimes has a little bit of a thump kind of sound, and having this low cut to clean out the low end reduces that thump and reduces that kind of sound, which will so it's to clean up the sound from the keyboards. That way, when you look at your bass, your bass, Okay, I'm gonna load my bass player's bass. Okay.
All my life you have been so good.
Okay, you can't hear right now, but that bass is very overpowering. It's like it's almost as if you're sticking your head in a subwoofer kind of levels, and I don't like how that sounds. And it's by no fault of the bass player or whatever. It's just the fact that it's just the raw sound coming from this recording, right? And I think you can see the frequency.
Good.
You see that?
With every breath
Giant
that
spike
I
here.
am in.
It's like you go to the movies and the Dolby sound point surround sound, that kind of huge sound. You don't need those frequencies. So I will cut out everything from 30 dB. I think that's a good starting point.
So good. With every breath that I am in. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I love your voice. You have led me through the fire and dark.
And same thing, I'll also add the compressor, but my suspicion is that my bass player already used a compressor when he recorded this, because it sounds quite compressed. So you may not have to add a compression if you don't have to. So my steps outlined in the process, it says to EQ, to compress, to reverb. If they already have those things inbuilt into the sound, you may not have to use it to apply it in post. The problem with that, though, is that if you have musicians who have a certain sound, they they want to use their reverb pedal, especially guitar players. We are notorious for this, right? We want to use our Strymon Big Sky, or we want to use our very fancy reverb pedal, and they send the track to you with reverb and weight effects. Don't need to scold them. Don't need to like, hey, why you dial it out? Don't need to dial it out. You can work around that sound. Sometimes it's a blessing that they send the sounds already like that, already pre-baked with effects. And when that happens, especially with guitar players, I will work around what they've chosen. If the sound works, if it doesn't work, I have to go back to them and say, "Hey, bro, you need to reduce the effects on your sound. Please send me something cleaner." And that's okay to do that. I mean, you all must have, your church team must have the kind of communication, and you have to give your production team the kind of authority to do that. No sound is too sacred to change. Like we must use that reverb sound because the Holy Spirit told me to use no such thing. If anything, it might be distracting. If it really is distracting, and you do pick it up, right? And if you do notice that it's distracting, I think you all must have that kind of openness to say, let's change the sound. Let's go with a different direction. So my bass player might have used I think he used a compression. I'm 90% sure he used a compressor. So I'm not going to compress here.
So good.
So anyway, okay, that's for the bass. 942, I am going to show you. Okay, so all this is working with the right. So right now I've shown you the basic sort of first steps to mixing, right? To to plan the sound you have in mind, to group the tracks together in buses so you can apply the same effects to each of them, to balance, to pan out the instruments on the stereo field, which you can't hear right now because of Zoom. Do listen to this in the replay. And then to process, and to process with EQ, with compression and reverb, and with EQ and compression. That's where your creativity can shine. You can, there is like a Bethel style of compression. There's a Hillsong style of reverb. There is name any band. There's a certain style of EQ or compression and reverb that's being applied. And if you're aware of this, and if you know how to break apart that compression style, the reverb style, the EQ style, you can craft the sound in a certain direction. And because we're doing a Bethel cover, we obviously went with the Bethel sound. And the Bethel sound, I think, is a very clean kind of compression. So some compression, when you compress some sounds, you may end up getting a bit like distorted or a bit gritty, a bit more powerful and impactful. And that is a choice. That is a certain, you can tweak parameters in the compression to make it sound that way. I think Bethel is very clean compression, very bright compression. The kind of so not only are they do they have the kind of compression sound, but even the tone of the compression is on the brighter side of the scale. And they have many guitar tracks, they have many keyboard tracks. Let me show you the final product. Okay, not final product, the semi-final product from this, because I still haven't done my vocal overdubs on this. Okay, 17 tracks. I have, okay, technically 15 tracks, which is still around the same ballpark figure, 15, 17 tracks. I can go up to 20. I worked on a 30-track song before, and that's because I overdub. I got the musicians to overdub a few things, like a lot of things. I have the drums quite low because the drums were recorded quite high, quite hot. The percussion is also slightly lower. I have my piano player. My piano player gave me 5 tracks. Yeah, he gave me 5 different tracks to work with. Okay, because here's the fun thing about recording and mixing, right? You're not constrained by the limitations of, like, let's say 4 band members on stage. If you only have one keyboardist, you have that one keyboardist sound. But because you're in the recorded environment, you have the freedom to layer different things going on. So with the piano and keys, the difference is the keys is the more rhythmic. Like, okay, I'm just gonna solo these tracks. I believe it's. Yeah, so that provides like the diamonds, right? If I add in this piano part here, which is a bit more rhythmic, I think. So that, I think each part by themselves sounds nice, but when you blend it together, it sounds like the piano is a bit more like, it's got more authority, more power, and more punch. And that is something that you can achieve because you've got more tracks in the mix. And same thing with the organ. I think one of his organ sounds is more rhythmic than the other. If I were to just solo his. Okay, you can't hear right now, but this organ track has got a rotary effect, and that means that the sound is moving from left to right, in a like across the stereo field. So that is a lot of motion. That's a lot of energy, and I believe his second organ sound is like a bit more rhythmic, like lead playing a bit. And it works here because if I just play the organ, like his organ track by itself, his rhythm organ track by itself, it's actually a bit like it's missing some body in the sound. I mean, it's nice, but there's no continuity of sound between the like that gaps in the organ sound. So when you blend the 2 tracks together, you get a nice, you get this full body organ sound. Now, same thing with the guitars. The guitars, I actually have, how many tracks do I have? Oh yeah, I have 2 acoustic guitars, and I have panned them semi-left and more towards the right to give a bigger acoustic feel. Now, where are the acoustics? Sorry, let me, where is it? Oh, here we are, okay. They're supposed to play the same part, but because they're 2 different people, ST stands for Samte, so 2 different acoustic guitar players are playing this same part. And I think they're both capoed on the 2nd fret for the song anyway. And because they're 2 different people, they're going to hit the strings slightly differently from each other. One trick that you can do in the studio is to have 2 tracks, like let's say acoustic tracks are played by 2 different people, or even by yourself. If you play the same thing recorded twice and you pan them left and right in a certain part of the stereo field, you're going to get a very big sounding acoustic part. It is the same logic behind how, if you've seen Hillsong live, and I was blessed to be able to because I did my undergraduate in Sydney. I saw them. I will be there for the album recordings. They always have at least 2 acoustic guitar players on stage. And for what I can remember, like the one acoustic guitar player, his sound is coming from the left side of speakers, then the other guitar player is coming on the right side of speakers. And the kind of stereo spread is just phenomenally large. It's a very, very nice and big way to get a big sound out of the same instrument. This is the same logic behind electric guitars too. If you have electric guitar like rhythm, you want to play like power chords and all that, get the same guy to play the same part twice, record twice, and then you pan left and right. Or like me, my guitar player and I decided to play, we're going to play lead parts and rhythm parts kind of like together, right? Then have them pan slightly out so that left and right so that there's a big stereo spread between the parts. That was the acoustic guitar. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4 electric guitar parts. Okay, note they're not played all at the same time, but you should be able to hear 2 different parts. And the reason why they're tuned that low is because I didn't want it to be like they're not there for like to be heard distinctly. They're there for textures and energy. Here's the interesting thing about sound. For sound, you not only hear it, but you feel it as well. And with certain sounds like electric guitars, right, it's not so much like if you have 6 tracks, right, the point of having the 6 tracks is not so that, you hear 6 distinct parts, but you kind of hear, you even though they're tuned lower in the mix in volume, you will hear an impact in the kind of energy that they bring. So energy seems to, this is my non-scientific way of describing it, but I think that energy has a way of transcending volume, if that makes sense. You can tune the guitars lower in the mix, but as long as they're playing with passion, as long as they're playing the part with energy, that translates somehow into that has an impact somehow on your listening experience. So it's not because I want to have 6 different guitar parts in the mix. It's because I want the energy to be a bit more impactful, and I do that by having different electric guitar parts. And as you can, I think I've tuned 2 parts to be louder than the rest, especially I think from the chorus onwards. Okay, let's go to the part here. So that is taking one guitar part and making it like the lead singer amongst the group. And the combined effect of having that many electric guitar parts, if I were to unsolo everything, is this. Yeah. So, if I to encourage you, the steps taken between the previous project which was maybe a lot less complete than this project, this particular example, the steps taken in between is not a lot. All I did was to follow the process through. I planned, I bussed the tracks together, I balanced the tracks together, I panned them, then I processed them with EQ, compression, and reverb. Now, reverb, one trick that I like to do is that I like to put a master reverb on the master track. I mean, this is something that I don't think the pros recommend doing, but I do it myself because it saves me time and it helps me to listen to the track in context with the same reverb. So this is one reverb that is applied to all the tracks, and the goal is to gel and to make the tracks cohesive to one another. This is a free one which I found many years ago. I don't think it's available anymore. Someone has to update me on the chat or something if it's illegal to share free stuff that is no longer available on the internet. I'm not sure whether there's any legal ramification of that. But yeah, anyway, I applied the same reverb to the master track so that I can hear how the whole thing will sound in context. And I like to find things that have presets because I time crunched. I cannot. I don't have the kind of time to tweak too much. So I like this reverb because it's got so many presets to choose from. And if you're dealing with individual parts, let's say your drums, you want to have a master reverb on the drums, just on the drum bus, you can do that for the guitars, etc. I just apply this vocal EC because it just sounds good. It sounds gentle, it doesn't sound too overbearing, but it sounds like it gels the sounds together in a cohesive way. That's your ultimate goal. Final things to note, there are, now that you've done this whole process, and you're reaching the final end of the mix, right? There are some things that you can do to correction, and this is where we have to be mindful of the reason why we want to correct. When we apply corrections to a mix or corrections to tracks, we are not saying that we only want perfection or we only want like zero mistakes in recording, because certainly there is an expectation somewhat from the listener, because we are so used to listening to radio songs, we are so used to listening to pitch perfect zero mistake recordings, that when we hear a mistake in a church recording, we think it's bad, and that may not be the case. I mean, that's not the case at all, right? It's not like we are striving for, we're not going to win Grammys with this. We're not going to we're not here to impress people with our skills. We're here to serve the Lord with the things that we have at our disposal. So be very careful. It's very easy to find an auto-tune VST, apply it to the singers to make them all pitch perfect, and to have zero mistakes. It's very easy to surgically remove, let's say if your bass player was off by like 20, 25, 30 milliseconds from a part, it's very easy to cut up its part and to move the whole file to time align the track to sound perfect. It's very satisfying for the mix engineer because I can make it sound that good. I can turn these people into like rock stars and pop stars, whatever you. But number one, I don't think you have enough time to do it because it really takes a lot of time to be 100% perfect. Number two, I think we shouldn't be sending the signal that perfection is the standard. Unless the singers are severely out of tune, I will use auto-tune. Or if the singers are slightly off, slightly, that it's not distracting, then sure, I will. If they're slightly distracting, yeah, I might use the auto-tune. And the other thing about correction is, so be very mindful of your reason for correction. Remember, we're not striving for perfection. We are striving to be less distracting. And for vocals especially, there can be a lot of things that are distracting. One thing is the breath noise when you sing into the microphone, because any breath of air that is either blown into or sucked, can hear, the microphone will pick it up. So then, do you want to cut out the sounds, the breath sounds? That's up to you. That's your prerogative. The other thing is the microphone, especially if you record without a pop filter. This is a microphone with a pop filter in front of it, and when you record using this little filter here blocks out all the p sounds or the plosives, b, f, sh, v. Those sounds will be stopped because it's all about the breath of air, right? It will be stopped by this filter here. When you don't have that filter, you will have pops, clicks, you will have like all manner of sibilants coming in. And the way to get rid of that is to use a de-esser. There are free ones out there too, and I'll try to link up all the free ones that I can find, and I hope they're still free because sometimes they change. Sometimes they're free for a moment, then the next day like they start to charge again. These are the tools that you can use to reduce the harshness of the plosives getting recorded into the microphone. I think if I play the yeah, so you see the meter jumped at the S because that is and that in this plugin, this is the demonstration that it is using the de-essing technology to cut out the sibilants. So now that you've done everything, you're happy with your mix. The last step in this, after all the creative things, is to export. And we click the export button. I will go directly for the wave because this is lossless quality. It's not compressed. It's not. It will allow the editors down the road to tweak the sound if they need to tweak the sound. Sample rate, bit depth. This is a very high bit depth actually. The standard is 44/100 at 16. 16 bit depth. If you don't know what these numbers stand for, don't worry. Just ensure that at least one number is selected. You can refer. I'll refer you to a playlist of the previous skills training workshops where I talked about sample rate and bit depth a bit more in depth. No pun intended. If you record it, if you export 32-bit depth, that's still okay, but it's very high resolution. It's a very big file size. I don't normally recommend that. So just export at 4410, 44/100, 16, and that's it. Then you can save, and it will start to mix down to have one audio file. So while this is going on, and I've reached the end of of the live demo. We are now in the Q&A section. It's 10:04. I'm sorry, this is slightly beyond slightly beyond 10 o'clock. I must have gone off on tension too much. But any questions?
Hi, Justin. Can you
Hi,
hear
Eileen.
me?
Yes, I
Hey,
can
hi
hear you.
there. Yes, I would like to know, basically your steps are to EQ and then after that compress. Do you need to normalize after that?
Normalize is a different kind of normalizing. Just means that it will take the loudest. It will try to bring your audio recording to have no headroom, zero headroom. Normalizing makes the sound as loud as it can possibly get. So the highest. Okay, so when you open a audio file. Okay, actually, I can do this in Audacity actually.
Yes, because currently I'm using Audacity. So my next question is, am I able to use your MEL equalizer as a plugin for Audacity?
Audacity is a bit. Let's see. Let me.
Because the MEL equalizer is definitely more. I have more control.
Yes.
Yes, and then for Audacity, there is actually not much control. So am I able to use that plugin in Audacity?
I think you can, but I think you need to I'm not sure whether you need to download a separate library and configure Audacity, because I think Audacity by itself is a very simple DAW, and it doesn't have the it might be a bit on the stupid side of things. It's meant to be very plug and play.
I cannot control a lot of things. Yeah. So the thing here is because I'm currently using a USB mic without a user interface. Without the interface.
Yeah.
So I'm not able to use your BandLab with that USB mic, right?
No, can because the microphone is the interface.
Okay.
So the microphone is the interface, and it will. Does your microphone have a headphone output? It should have a headphone.
Yeah, it has a headphone. Okay. It has a headphone output. Yeah.
So right now, the common thing about the modern stuff is that they like to integrate everything together. So right now, that's probably one of those microphones that's for streamers, podcasters.
Yeah, when I went to the shop, that was the one that they recommended.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you can actually let me just show you in Audacity what I can do. Okay. What's your end goal? Your end goal is to make it as loud as possible, or?
Actually, my end goal is, because I'm actually a newbie in this world of sound, so I'm actually trying to hear what is the difference, because I realized that you EQ, after that you compress, and then you do not normalize for the voice, but you do not normalize for the voice, yes.
No, I don't.
And you do not reverb the voice, but you reverb at the end of the entire mix. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So you do not reverb and then you do not reverb the voice on its own or the instrument on its own. You actually do them all together.
Yes, I do that. I do that for several reasons. Number one, because sometimes I have to deal with people sending me the phone recordings, and when they record on the phone, the reverb sound from the room gets recorded in the phone microphone as well. So there actually is a bit of reverb in the phone recording. So from there, I tweak my sounds based on their particular audio recording. The phone recordings tend to be very bright, so it is quite it is happenstance, and it's fortuitous and happenstance that is very bright, because that's the kind of sound that we're going for anyway. The bright reverb, bright compression, etc.
So about the normalization, you were saying that it actually give you very little headroom. So is it good for voices, or is it actually good for instrument?
I would normalize actually I don't use normalization a lot. I only use it if let's say if I do scripture reading and I need to send over a file as loud as possible where headroom is not an issue. I normalize the sound, because there's nothing else in the mix to compete with the voice. So voiceover work, scripture reading, etc.
So for music, like for all this worship music, actually it's actually not very important, right? The normalization.
Headroom is more important than normalizing. So I would, instead of cancelling out the headroom with normalizing, I would raise the volume instead. Either
Gain.
Raise the
Use-
you can raise the gain will make the signal hotter or colder, like hotter or
yes.
less hot. If you notice, I don't even touch the gain dials up.
Yeah, you don't use the gain.
There's a gain. Where the gain dials are? This. Yeah, but anyway,
Because sometimes I actually use because I do not have a lot of control. So what I do is I actually use the gain dial.
Yeah.
And it actually gives me clips. So I have got to minus it so that it doesn't get very hot.
Here is it this gain?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. So with Audacity, I try not to touch this unless really necessary. Actually, the thing that I do here is I will instead of normalizing, I amplify, which is kind of the same thing, but it gives me a bit more control. So let's say if I'm working with this, right, and I still want a bit of headroom in my sound, I will click on amplify. The controls here, right? The P amplitude here, if you set it at 0, this is like normalizing. That means everything, the loudest sound will not exceed 0 dB. So I put this at -3 or -9 if I'm working with if this is going to be part of a big mix, I like to have a bit more headroom, so I'll put it at -9. But if I know that I'm not going to work with a lot of instruments, or
then it's okay.
Then I can put it at -3, which will ensure that I don't clip.
Is there a reason why you don't use the gain and then use amplify instead?
With amplify, I can see where the sound wave might clip. With gain, I don't think you can see it.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, there is no indication.
Yeah,
you can only hear it on the headphone, but you can't see it on the sound waves.
Yeah, so amplifying gives me a visual indication as to where it might clip. So even right now, I can see that potentially this area here might clip if I push the gain too high up. There is a compressor. I think Audacity does have a compressor.
Yeah, it does have a compressing compressor. Yeah, it has that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think
yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just that because like what you said, the male equalizer has more preset, but for Audacity, I think they only have one preset, which is not very, I have got to do a lot of experiment. So it's again, like what you say, time crunch. So, it's like, wow, because I'm new at this, so I have got to listen to them, all the sounds very carefully, and I do not know how to balance all the different instrument and the voice. So I use the gain dial, you see.
Oh, okay. And you're using Audacity, which
yes. Not that clever.
Yeah, not that clever. If you were to move up to if you're on Windows, you use Cakewalk. If you're on Mac, even GarageBand is a very good.
So my USB mic is not an issue. I can actually go ahead and download
Cakewalk.
Cakewalk, right? And then I can actually give it a go instead.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, okay, I will try and I will let you know. Thank you so much, Justin.
Yeah,
I have been very puzzled because it's like some people advise me to normalize, but then when I normalize it, I do not see any change in the sound waves because do you want the sound waves to be thin or to be fat?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is context.
Okay.
You're recording for a band or recording by yourself?
Actually, I am I'm planning to record it for church. So, but it is just that like we want to produce different kind of sound and I'm actually testing out. But basically it's actually a voice with violin or maybe viola and piano. It's actually maybe more strings and voice. Yeah.
I see. One thing you'll find, especially, just off the cuff right now, one thing you'll find is that the violin, viola, and the human voice are all going to compete for the same EQ space. They all have the same kind of like range.
It sounds very luana, like wow, everything all together.
Yeah, because they're quite similar to each other, and the one way to treat that is you can make it a bit better by spacing them out, pan them left, pan them right. It kind of like how if you were performing on stage, you get the violin and the viola to stand slightly further apart, then the singer's in the middle.
This is what I take away tonight. Yes, panning. Then I was like, oh, I see. But I think there is actually no panning function in Audacity.
Audacity have.
It has
There's a pan function also. So if I just very quickly, you see this dial here.
Uh-huh.
Left, right.
Okay.
Yeah, so this you can move the sounds left and right. You can move the stereo pen left and right with these controls.
Oh, okay, I see it now. Yes, I have been looking at that thing. Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
so this is your pen control.
Oh, okay. So I can actually try to separate all the different elements, all the different, and then it will not sound so 乱七八糟. I call it
crowded mix.
Crowded. Yeah. So I have been trying. So you have been very helpful. This is my big takeaway tonight. Pen. All right. Okay, I'll try to download and see whether I can actually use my USB mic. Yeah.
Yeah.
With
sure.
The band.
BandLab and Cakewalk.
BandLab and Cakewalk. I have got to download them separately. Is it BandWalk and Cakewalk?
BandLab. I don't think you were here last time we met, but BandLab
I was. This is my first lesson. Yeah.
Cool. BandLab is browser based, so it works on your browser. So you open up your Google Chrome or your Microsoft Explorer and you key in BandLab.com. It will. It's like social media, So you access the website, and then what's good about BandLab is that the browser will integrate with your microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can record it. Yeah, actually I can do it right now. Just to show you. So right now we are in this is BandLab, right? Oops. Yeah. So on BandLab, this is Google Chrome. This is not a separate program. I can add. No, I can't do it. I can't do it here. But normally, this button here allows me to select the microphone source. So if your USB microphone is if it's the MV7 or something, then
it will pop out the name.
Yeah, then you can select it as a source. Then you can hit the record button and record.
And then how about the rest of the plugins, the male equalizer, your ambience? How do I integrate all these things together?
Okay, BandLab has its own effects, and you cannot load plugins on BandLab, but you can load plugins with Cakewalk. So the key idea in BandLab is you coordinate the recording amongst your team.
Okay.
Whatever it is, they need to record voice, instruments, whatever. And then at the end of it, someone, the recording engineer, maybe you or whoever's in the production team, will extract those tracks and put them together in a separate DAW to edit the tracks. So in my case, tonight I'm showing Cakewalk, which has the capability of adding the different effects.
Okay. Yeah, because I think Cakewalk has more control. Yeah, so
much more control and a lot more intimidating if you've never seen this number.
It's scary stuff. But I enjoy myself tremendously. Yeah, so I will. So the Cakewalk, I can actually just go online and.
Yep. I provided the link to. In the slides that I'll send out, there is going to be a link that you can access this stuff. So there'll be links to download Cakewalk, links to Mellow Audio's the free VSTs that you can download, and as well as and because this is your first time, the email will also have a link to the previous slides and previous recording as well, so you can take a look at that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin. I've enjoyed myself tremendously. Very enriching.
No problem.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for their patience.
I'm sure they've learned stuff too. Cool. Anything else from the rest of the guys? I recognize Yvette. Okay. If not, thank you for coming, everybody. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to process at one go. So I don't expect you all to be experts, at this point in time. But if I were to conclude, let me turn this on. Nope, I don't want this to play. Okay. Sorry, I'm still a bit of a tech dinosaur. In conclusion, mixing is both an art and a science, and if you forget everything I said, you have to put on the producer hat when you are mixing your song. Knowing what sound you want is half the battle won, and it takes practice. These are the things. These are skills. Your ear is a muscle. It needs to be trained. It needs to be exposed to different sounds. My encouragement to you is that don't expect this to be instantaneous. Expect that For a long time, you're not going to be able to tell differences between different sounds, but after a while, you will be able to. It's a matter of time. And if your mixes do sound bad at first, don't worry, take heart, you will improve. Let's see. Yeah, and this is right on slide 22. I think you will be able to click these links when I send it out. I'll include more things since more things were mentioned, but yeah, the stuff that you want for free, all here. That being said, it is now 10:19, and if no one has any questions, I am going to close our time tonight. Don't leave yet, because we have I've got several announcements to make. After the closing prayer, there's going to be like a information carousel that the slides is going to show up, and we're going to have QR codes for you to scan, because we want you all to be informed of our upcoming events. There is going to be there's going to be more webinars like this. There's going to be webinars for the Lenten journey, the journey through the season of Lent. There's a symposium that is happening in June, and registration should be opening soon. Take note of those dates. And there's also going to be registration open for our Certificate of Christian Worship. That is our our once a month class where we go through and equip worship leaders and those in leadership positions in the worship ministry. Now, all that being said and done, thank you again, and let me close us with a word of prayer. Our gracious and Heavenly Father, we are in uncharted territories for some of us. We are in places and spaces that we never thought we'd have to venture towards. You know, all this digital church, all this digital media, all this audio video stuff. It can be quite intimidating. It can be scary, and I have no doubt some of us are confused right now because of the sheer amount of technical things to learn. But we know that by your grace we will improve. By your grace we can. We want to dedicate these skills to you, because we want to serve your church. We want to bring the people of our various congregations, whether in Singapore or Malaysia. We pray that these skills we learn tonight and the skills that we develop from tonight onwards, that they'll be used to expand your kingdom, to glorify your name, to bring people to places of worship, to bring together our voices, to raise songs of worship, to raise songs of joy, songs of victory, songs that proclaim your goodness, your righteousness, and in the face of our grim realities we face, the grim realities of today, the pandemic, the coup, things that are happening overseas. We pray that our songs that we come out will be beacons of hope for people. When they listen to them, they will bring their hearts to worship the God who is our hope, our strength. So I ask for a blessing over my brothers and sisters. Bless them with the mind of Christ. Bless them with the ability to go back, to relearn, recap, and to apply these things that we've learned tonight. This we ask in the wonderful name of Jesus Christ, and all God's people say, Amen.